Just walk us through the path towards you founding or co-founding Brainify.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing started a few years back after I graduated from computer engineering.
Okay.
I ended up working at Apple and Symantec, came across probably a few hundred different marketing technologies, and really quickly realized that people really want data science, but they don't always have the know-how or the classical training to apply it at scale and use it in a way that's really effective for their end consumer experiences. Met my co-founder at an IEEE conference. We talked a lot around user behavior and how dynamic we as consumers are. And that's how Brainify was born. The whole vision around what we've been trying to build and been working towards is we want to democratize data science. And today we're starting with consumer enterprises to help them enable predictive personalization at scale, but definitely really focused on giving the best consumer experiences possible without you having to manage your own team of data scientists to make those experiences a reality.
What were you doing at Apple and Symantec? Were you a software engineer or?
So I was a software engineer in both parts. At Apple, I was in the IAD group, really focused on algorithms. On Symantec, I was working with the e-commerce group. And so in both different ecosystems, I picked up a lot around what it takes to be able to roll out new technologies, but also what that meant for the bottom line. So for us today, we primarily work with marketers, but we understand the hardships of being able to integrate and implement. And so we've really worked hard to build our platform to be as plug and play, as lightweight as possible, so that you can really experience the quality and the effectiveness without having to go through 6 months of integration before it's really effective. There's a whole process when you think about the personalization journey, and many firms are on different stages and spectrum across this. You have some that's in the early stages trying to figure out how do you actually collect data in a really scalable way? What can you do with that data once that's in your system? How do you tag your sites? And then you can move on to something more advanced, which is how can you actually optimize that consumer journey? How can you start generating baselines that's not biased? And then taking that step further, which is how can you now do this predictive personalization at scale? Because the human eye can only do so much. As a person, we can maybe at most figure out that there's 10 types of people coming to my site, but what can you actually give them as a unique experience, and how can you divide that up so it's really a one-on-one experience is where you need a system or a platform that will help you kind of go across all of that.
Can you give an example for that part with understanding the behavioral context?
Yeah, I mean, one of our awesomest customers is Bevmo. So if you've ever purchased alcohol on the West Coast, you've probably been to one of their stores. If you think about just how we change and adapt in our taste preferences, and I'll use myself as an example, right? I mean, most of the time I'm not heavily drinking, but when I do, I enjoy a nice glass of red wine here and there. But sometimes if it happens to be the end of a quarter and my sales team and my whole marketing team and my whole team does fantastic and my product's growing, well, I want to make sure everyone gets to celebrate together. So I may go and purchase spirits that I normally would not drink and get that delivered over to my teammate's house, which is a very different behavior than my traditional, which could be more of a preference towards red wine. Okay. But also because if it's hot outside and it's a weekend, I may be interested in something that's cold and bubbly. And so this really dynamic way of understanding what we want in the moment becomes really important, instead of just kind of slapping a one-size-fit-all hat on Diane saying I'm only into buying red wines. It's able to have a really dynamic approach, which is what helps to drive the revenue, the sales, and all in all, just stickiness, right? And your customers coming back, retaining them so that you can really drive and give them a better experience.
So with the software, so if you go to the Bevmo site, it could pick up that you're not necessarily shopping for yourself. There's some kind of celebration happening or some kind of momentous event happening, and here's some bubblies that you could use we recommend that you could use to celebrate.
Exactly. And this type of insight, the context behind it, can be applied in all sorts of different ways without you having to uproot your existing marketing tech stack. We're really this AI as a service that you can stick in. You can make your existing tech stack really, really smart. So you can put our recommendations, our dynamic content, our personalization on your existing website. You can inject it into your email. So instead of having to redevelop your email templates every time, you end up having one with millions of variations, which saves huge amounts of time. We help other brands cut their newsletters from 6 weeks of prep down to an hour. But all of that comes from getting better content, better experience, but also a better process.
How long's the company been around, Brainify?
So we've been around since 2016, but
Okay.
when we first started, we were actually really focused on developing as an API. We wanted to be leveraged in a lot of new tools and software, and we ended up meeting our first marketing partners around 2018. And ever since then, we've been focused a lot on consumer enterprises on the marketing team or the brand teams. So we specialize in specialty retailers and consumer packaged goods now.
Why is your solution a little bit different or a little bit more appealing right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely lots of different AI platforms and services out there. I think the part that makes us the most unique, at least from a technical standpoint, is that we're a temporal AI. What that means is we take a lot of timing context into how a person's preferences from a consumer standpoint will be. And it's not necessarily a new technology, but it's a new application of the temporal space. So back in the day, even today, actually, a lot of airlines, airports, ground transportation, even fraud detection leverages a lot in the temporal space. They leverage a lot of time intervals to kind of assess when there's patterns or anomalies. And so the way we've applied it is we took those really powerful algorithms and applied them in-house directly to how we think about user behavior. And given that, it gives our partners really valuable and effective results. But on top of that, it means that they don't necessarily have to go and find their own expert on the best personalization engine that they could build in-house. They could actually hook into ours and get that power and that kind of capabilities right out of the box in a way that's really easy to digest as the end consumer's use cases.
I remember hearing about Twilio, where it was essentially the same thing. If you want messaging capabilities and things like that, it's just a plug and play. You don't need to hire your own data scientist team there too. So this is almost the name of the game right now if you really want to thrive in the industry, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, plug and play is an important part, being lightweight, because I think there is different competition out there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, lightweight can come in lots of different shapes and sizes. Lightweight could mean that it's easy to use, but not necessarily fast to activate, or it be fast to activate, but it doesn't really hit your enterprise needs. And so that's where we sit from. At least my background and my co-founder's background, we come from a pretty good understanding around how do you actually deploy products and features in a large enterprise scale.
Yeah.
Given that combination is how we're able to say, yes, it does sound too good to be true, but what's your risk? You pay a low cost for a POC, which is almost negligible, right?
Yeah.
We want to prove to you that this is true.
Yeah.
And then you actually give us 14 days to go live and you get results all throughout. So it's a really good way to de-risk whether or not this vendor is right for you, but it's also our way to kind of put our foot through the door and really kind of like show you what we're capable of, right? So you're not just thinking this is going to be a poof of hot air, but it's really the fact that once you get to try it, we've never lost a partner since then. At least from a business model standpoint, we've done a really good job at, but we also have a really strong product, which definitely helps in the deliverability of the results afterwards. I think you have to have both of that, right. And not all startups, especially smaller companies, can manage between that. So not to toot my own horn, but I think those definitely an area that I'm very proud of our team from both the product side as well as on the business side. When we look at how we build Brainify, it's this whole umbrella. It's not just having the best algorithms or the best business process. It's that we have to make those meld so that at the end, we're really helping our partners in a way that goes beyond just here's algorithms, apply it, but really changing that personalization process and expectation of what you should be doing for your end consumers.
And for this week's Notes and Charts, make sure to go to investors.com/podcast, where you'll find details for each episode in the podcast episode section. And make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate it. You can also send us your questions and comments to investingpodcast@investors.com. We would love to hear from you and may use your comments on an upcoming episode.